You know, the thing I'm a little upset about this second to last chapter, what? Well, this is supposed to be the final battle, the most epic part of the story, the great and grand conclusion to this whole race, and it's shorter than the episodes that feature around Donovan. Well, if you want to be fair, on Fall of Starfleet, Rexy's chapter where she and her friends stopped the Death Egg with the use of the Chaos Emeralds was the longest one of the bunch, while the final fight with Conquest was significantly shorter. Yeah, you're right. I guess I just kinda wanted the final battle to be a lot longer. Well, hey, at least it's not another hour and 40-minute video. Hey, don't mock them. They do get into views. True. Well, episode 28, here we go! And yes, folks, this is why I love Sonic over Mario. You just can't find fanfics like this in a Mario style. I say this and watch somebody try to give me an epic Mario fic. Knuckles sat in his cave on the floating island, watching the Freedom Fighters make yet another unsuccessful attempt to gain control of Robotnik's emeralds. He sighed, seeing them driven off when they had been so close to achieving their goal. Right now, he didn't care which side got the emeralds as long as one side did. They were running out of time and doing so in a hurry. Knuckles turned away from the view before him and began to pace around the emerald chamber. How did I know it would come to this? He muttered. Ever since this was revealed to me, I knew it would come to this. So I can't wait any longer. It must be now. Knuckles stalked from the chamber, passing many of the floating island's inhabitants along his walk. Past Vector, SBO, Mighty, Elias, Chili Sue, his mom, Kneecaps. But where before he would always make time to talk with them, now only one word could be heard passing from his lips. Armageddon. Tana sat back, sweat dripping from his brow. Rosie smiled up at him, catching her breath. It's not so easy anymore, is it? She whispered. Tana smiled. Her training in magic was progressing far faster than he thought it would. These little contests between them were getting harder to win. Pretty soon her power was surpassing even his own. And you thought I was letting you win, he murmured. Remember the last time you did? Rosie asked, tracing the outline of a red palm print on his cheek. If I'm going to do this, I don't want any special treatment from you just because you left me. Taz was about to make another remark when he caught sight of Knuckles appearing in the main hall. We'll have to finish this another time, he said, walking out to meet Knuckles. What brings you here, Guardian? He asked calmly. Knuckles looked at Tanis with flat eyes, speaking to him the only word he had spoken since he had left the chamber on the floating island. Armageddon. Tanis looked down and Rosie rushed to his side. Is there no other way? Knuckles shook his head to see himself on one of the benches near the altar. I will bring them here, he said, closing his eyes and preparing the spells he needed in his mind. Rosie touched his arm gently and brushed the back of a lock of her head. We will bring them here, she said quietly. Robotnik was sitting in his command chair, going over a map of the Great Forest for the 100th time that day. If I didn't know better, I swear you were able to move not all. He muttered into his mustache. But I'll find him. I won't ever give up on it. Then, just as he was about to zero in his new satellite on one of the few as of yet unexplored areas, a wind rose up around him and he was gone. In Knothole, the Freedom Fighters were returning from their latest attempt on Robotnik's emeralds. They piled wearily to the war room, tending to their injuries, however minor they were. That was a disaster, Sonic muttered as the last came in. Sally motioned for the door to be closed and sat down at the table. You know, Sonic, it almost seems like you're losing a step or two, she said jokingly. What do you mean, Sal? Sonic asked. Well, you used to run between the swap bots and make them shoot each other. I saw you setting a trap for them before we left. Sonic shrugged, not meeting Sally's gaze. You're the one who always told me not to rely on my speed so much. Besides, Neville only got me 2 swap bots. This way, I think I took out 10 at once. Sally smiled. Sonic was right, as he was privately glad to see it. But no matter how much Sonic had matured, he still tended to rely on his speed. This was the first mission that he could ever recall Sonic having to be reminded to run. That worried her to no end, because Robotnik's speed was still their best offensive and defensive weapon against Robotnik. Before she could say anything further about it, or anyone could say anything for that matter, a wind sprung up in the hut. When it died, the hut was completely empty. Strangely enough, the slotbots that passed out Robotnik's command center and the animals that passed by Naho's war room heard the exact same word at the same time. Armageddon. Taz and Rosie opened their eyes, looking at the suddenly full sanctuary. Welcome, Taz said quietly. I'm sorry for bringing you here so rudely, but Knuckles told me that you had to be here, and be here now. What's this all about? Sally asked, turning to stare at Knuckles. Knuckles stood up and faced him. When he spoke, it seemed that his voice came not from his throat, but from inside his very soul. When the race for the Emeralds began, I told you that it must be sighted within a year, and that I could do whatever I needed to do to make sure it was. That means I could even call a final battle for all the Emeralds. That time is at hand. The time of Armageddon. A sharp gasp came from everyone there, even Robotnik. Knuckles silenced them with an icy glare. It is my decision to make. You all know this. I'm telling you this now, so you have time to prepare. Armageddon will be held in 13 days from now. You're all hereby warned not to attack the other again, for I will be holding all 7 emeralds until Armageddon comes. Armageddon will literally be the final battle. Robotnik wanted the Flame Fighters in one-on-one combat. The only rule is this. Combat continues until one can no longer fight. A fight to the death, then, Robotnik muttered, smiling. No, Doctor, Knuckles said. It could very well end in death, but it does not have to. It could be something as simple as unconsciousness or a broken limb. Anything that will prevent one from continuing the fight. Don't forget, I choose the battleground, Robotnik said. You gave me such when I allowed them to claim the Shadow Emerald from that thing. Knuckles nodded. I remember. Do you know what battleground you wish? What else? Robotropolis itself. The entire city is the battleground. I might have known, Sally said. You'll probably have the entire city rigged with traps. That is right, Knuckles said. Now then, who among you will face him? Every hand shot in the air. I'm the princess here, Sally said. I can fly. I'm the best strategist, and I'm the third fastest. It should be me. You might be able to fly, Sally girl, Bunny said. Like your fight leaves something to be desired. I'm the best purifier we have, and I'm the strongest. Except for Dulcie and Roar, of course. Also, with my training, the fight between me and Robotnik will be short and sweet. Sonic raised his hand. Guys, forgetting something? That may be so, my lovely doll. Antoine said, but your fighting may not be as effective against someone with a balance size. I am secondary to you in the martial arts, but I am a better swordsman. Swords person, Bunny interrupted. Whatever it is, no matter how tall you are, a sword can still bring you down to size. As the only royal guardsman, it is my duty to protect the House of Acorn. I should be going. Oh, you got great points, Teal said. Now, I'm not the best at anything you mentioned, but I know some of each. Anything, I should go because Robotnik won't be able to prepare for me. I'm too well-rounded. Nice, Tails, but it doesn't matter how well he prepares for me, Sandra said, forming a crystal in her palm. I can make crystals that can cut almost anything, especially him. I'm almost as fast as Sonic, almost as smart as Sally. Also, I'm not ready to be queen. Even Sally wins, you may not be in any condition to rule. That's why it has to be me. Dulcie opened her mouth to argue, but her eyes suddenly spaced out. I understand and argue, she said, but I'm getting called to Dragon's Test. Time to leave my egg. See you all in a month. Pew! She hurried out the door and squeezed out, flying out at full speed. Sonic could always shake his head. My, how random. Once again, Dulcie proving her usefulness to this plot. Rotor wants her go. I have a reason to win, none of you do. I'm fighting for the safety of my child. With all the powers of Bahamut at my disposal, and the fact I'm closest in size to Robotnik, I'll have the best chance. Sonic looking around, seeing if anyone else was going to speak. At that point, Link stepped forward. Robotic has done much to destroy a lot of this place. I go. Mario was next. No, it isn't me! No, Kirby said. Samus, he's got a bounty on him so large it's not even funny. Mega Man caught his Mega Buster. No, I call dibs. Simon Belmont could only stare and glare at Robotnik. No, I call dibs. Kelowna just nodded, straightening his ears, because apparently Kelowna is a guy I never knew. Nice cracked her knuckles, getting ready to fly at him. Guys? Bomberman brought out one of his bombs. Hey, guys! Main character over here? At that point, Ezio just flashed his blade. Ezio! The almighty Kratos brought out his blades while Ratchet correct his wrench. Oh, come on, give me a break. Jack and Daxter both growled at Robotnik. Is there anybody Robotnik hasn't pissed off in the game universe? Curious, Sonic walked outside and saw a very long line of various video game mascots, including Rocket Knight, Rayman, Rinstar, and Dynamite Headdy. At the very end of the list was Vector Man. I don't think I've ever seen you before. Vector Man, never seen you before either. After every other video game character who hated Robotnik's guts had their turn, said they were all looking out. All you want to do this, perhaps as much or more than I do, he said slowly. But let me ask you this. Who's actually been trained for this? I have, and I'm the most ready. Sally may be the real leader, but you all look to me. How could I let anyone else take on Robotnik? This is the day I've been dreaming about since we were 5 years old. The day Robotnik took over. I've lost 13 years to sell my accounts with him, and I've got 13 days to go. Now, if anyone else here can say that they want it that badly, or as long as I have, I'll step aside. At that point, Blaze raised her hands. I want him. Amy brought out her hammer. I want him. Shadow could only nod. I want his guts. Oh, for Pete's sake! Marine, I just want to be... have the feeling bolted. Cream could only nod as she and Marine were joined together. Sage suddenly appeared out of nowhere. I'm just here for the food. I hope you don't mind. I just got added. At that point, Jeffrey could bring out his blade. I'm fighting for some honor. But if Sonic wants to fight... One by one, the rest of the Freedom Fighters nodded, and the other video game characters. Even Robotnik started to smile. As you said, this is how it should be, he said in a low, raspy voice. Bring your best, rodent. You'll not get another chance at me. I'm looking forward to it, Sonic said, standing on a bench staring Robotnik eye to eye. 13 days, Robotnik. That's all you have left. As this was going on, Donovan was waiting in the Great Forest for Sonic to arrive for another training session. 15 minutes late, he muttered, checking his watch. He pulled his communicator out and turned it on. Nadia, do me a favor, he said calmly. Go over to Knothole and find out why Quills isn't here yet. Sure thing, Donovan, Nadia said, pulling on her boots. She turned off her communicator and walked toward the door of the hut. You know, when I first reviewed this fic and did this sub on Fandom Fridays ages ago, wow, that felt so long ago. Back with my old headset, I forgot to mention this, but there's a part of me that feels like there should have been more Sonic interacting scenes with Robotnik. Sonic going up against and really showing how much this is hurting him. I kind of wish Sonic had more screen time to really amp up how important this is. Someone is approaching the door, the computer advised as Nadia reached the doorknob. Is it Sonic? Nadia asked, pausing her hand on the door. If it were Sonic, I would have said Sonic. The computer returned. I don't know who it is. Describe. Female fox. White fur, garnet red eyes, dark urban hair, black t-shirt and shorts. Oh, what's Lydia doing here? Nadia wondered out loud. Where are you? Donovan calls her Linda.
I see. So I let her in.
Nadia sighed and opened the door, just as Lydia was about to knock. "Oh," Lydia said, startled. "Hi, Nadia. Oh, is Donovan here?" "Actually, no," Nadia said. "What did you need him for?" "I need to speak to him, Nadia," Lydia said. "He's the only one I could think of who might be able to tell me what's going on. The flame fires have disappeared." "What?" Nadia asked, then waved Lydia off as they were going to repeat herself. "I heard you the first time. I can't believe it. Come in and I'll contact Donovan."
I already have him, Kabir said.
"Now, what happened to the freedom fires?" Donovan asked, his voice coming over the computer's speakers. "Like I said, they disappeared," Lydia repeated. "I was a little late getting to the war room after they had just returned from another try of the ambulance. I saw them all gone in, but when I got there, it was empty." "That does sound strange," Nadia said. "Can you make anything out of it, Donovan?"
"Not yet," he said slowly. "Is there anything you're leaving out, Linda?"
"You know, I hate when you call me that," Lydia muttered. "Anyway, now that you mention it, there was one other thing. It didn't make sense to me, but maybe it will do to you. As I looked in the war room, I heard someone whispering. I couldn't see anyone, so I dismissed it. And maybe it's important." "Could you make out what was being said?" Nadia asked. "I think it was Armageddon."
Nadia's eyes widened in shock, and she knew Donovan's good eye was doing the same.
"I'll meet you in Nahel, Donovan," she said quickly. "If Lydia's right, it's crunch time."
"Fine," Donovan said, then clicked his communicator eye. "Device 1, activate!" he nearly yelled, taking off for Nahel at full speed.
It didn't take long for Donovan to reach Nahel. He wasn't surprised to see Nadia and Lydia there ahead of him, but he was surprised to see them be escorted to the wardroom by Sandra and Sally. He pulled up quickly, tried to turn around, fly away, but didn't see that Dory and Isabella were right behind him. The collided down in a heap of fur. "Isabella!" Lydia yelled, hurrying over and picking up her daughter. She said quietly, "But nothing anywhere."
"Didn't expect to see you here, Donovan,"
Dorian muttered, pushing Donovan off of him. "Ah, Donovan," Sally said, coming up and grabbing Donovan by his arm. "So glad you're here. Saves me the trouble of going to your hut to get you. There's quite a few things you need to know." Donovan rolled his eye, but put up only a token protest as Sally dragged him inside the hut. In addition to the other freedom fighters, all of them he saw, except Dulcie, Donovan saw Uncle Chuck sitting near Maurice and Patricia. Patricia had a Kelly Min on her lap, and the kid was squirming and twisting, trying to get down on the floor. Patricia had a loving but very tight grip on her daughter, knowing full well as he got to the floor, she was good out of reach in a second. Sally walked Donovan to a seat in front of and sat him down next to Nadia. "Now that we're all here," Sally said, walking to the table in front, "there are a few things we need to go over. First, for those of you who aren't here, the reason why Dulcie is not here right now is because she's flown to Dragoness to lay her egg. Second, and more important, Knuckles is called Armageddon, the final battle." Nadia sighed barely, and Donovan closed his one good eye slowly. "Sonic will be our representative in the battle," Sally continued. "He's been training for this for a while now. And now that we're home, Sonic, mind telling me what you meant by that?"
Sonic shrugged. "It was going to come out eventually. I've had Donovan train me for this. Antoine was the suggestion him to me after I swore him to secrecy about it."
"You suggested to hire him over mine?" Bunny asked. "You know nobody can match me in a fair fight." "Very true, my love," Antoine said. "But the fight that's to happen between Sonic and Robotnik will be anything but fair. Out of everyone I know, Donovan has spending the most time studying Robotnik. If anyone could be training Sonic for what Robotnik has planned, it would be him." Donovan had turned to watch the exchange between Antoine and Bunny. When he turned back, Sally was right in his face. She had 2 fingers into his nostrils and brought his face instances of hers. "I know you were alone for most of your life," she said, smiling what could be taken for a sweet smile, or enough for the hard glint in her eye. "But you are a freedom fighter now. You may not think so, but you are. That means anything you know, anything you do, you tell me about. Do we have an understanding?" She moved her arm up and down, forcing Donovan to nod. "Good." Sally let him go and straighten up. "Oh, and one more thing," she said, turning away. "I will be overseeing the remaining training sessions. You don't mind, do you?
After all, you only have 13 days left. Donovan stood up and slowly walked over to Sally. With you saying that as a princess, I have nothing to say about that, he said in a calm, normal voice, then turned her around, grabbed her by the arms, and brought her face to face. But you saying that, Sally? I've just begun, he said. His voice had a hard edge to it. Nadia jumped from her seat, put her hand on Donovan's arm. Easy, Donovan, she said quietly. You know she's right. We don't have time to argue. And besides, Sonic added, don't we have a training session today? Donovan let out a low, rumbling sound. He looked at Sally again and said, I train rough. Any interference, and you will be asked to leave. That's number 1. Number 2, only 2 people grab me by my nostrils like that. My mother and Rosie. Do that again, and it will take more than Nadia and Sonic to calm me down. Let go of Sally, turned around and walked out, expecting Sonic and Sally to follow. Sally opened her mouth to make one to start retorts that came to mind, but Sonic stopped her. He didn't say a word, but just looked at her. With Sonic looking at her like that, Sally couldn't think of anything bad, as he just grumbled something to herself and walked out. Sonic followed behind her quickly, seeming very subdued. Over the next 6 days, Donovan put Sonic through the most intense training he could devise. Sally was there every second, but never interfered, to Donovan's surprise. Of course I want to help him, she would say, but I learned long ago I had to do what's best for Mobius, and this is it. When the last training session was over, Sonic sat Sonic and Sally down. I've done all I could, he said. I'm leaving you with one last thought. Expect anything from Robotnik. Anything. Sonic and Sally nodded seriously, then headed back to Knothole. How's your foot, Sonic? She asked as they ran side by side. Sonic shrugged. It doesn't hurt me when I run, but I wouldn't want to try to kick anything with it. Donovan took the communicator from his pocket and turned it on. Crunch time, Nadia, he said. Everything ready? I'm moving the last piece of the equipment to the hut now, she said, her voice straining. I'll meet you there. Donovan nodded and took off for the hut, hoping he would get everything set up in the 7 days that remained. Sonic didn't just lay around for the 7 days either. Each day, one of the freedom fighters trained him. All to the tune of Eye of the Tiger. Look, it was either that or It Doesn't Matter or I'm Here. Definitely not Vandalize My Heart. I'm saving that. Sonic remained among her crystals. Tails dropped things from above that Sonic had to dodge. Rudder threw everything he had at Sonic and then some. Antoine dueled him in a sword fight. Uncle Chuck devised a holographic maze that Sonic had to beat his parents through. Bunny took him to a limit in a wrestling match. And finally, Sally raced him all over the Great Forest. But he passed each test. Not easily, and not without some injuries. But if it had been Robotnik he would have faced, the emeralds would be Sonic's. The night before Armageddon, Sonic turned in as soon as the race was over. He took a quick shower. I wanted Sally's shower scenes, not Sonic's. He crawled into bed, fairly exhausted. As he snuggled up under the covers, he felt a warm body press up against his. He quickly turned around and was met by Sally's lips. After what Sonic had to admit was the best kiss he ever received, he pulled back slightly and looked at her. Sally. Sally put a finger on his lips. Sonic, I know what we agreed on, but I don't care anymore. If you don't win, then I want this to be the last memory I have of you. If you do, we'll be married before anyone realizes what happened, if anything at all. Please, Sonic? Excuse me 1 sec. Oh, come on! Again! Seriously, people? Really? You know, I still don't have a problem with this being premarital sex. I really don't. But right now, I'm with Sally, Sonic. There is no excuse. Okay, there really isn't. If anything, making love right before a final battle like this would be even better than marriage. Have you ever heard the old saying, thank God we're alive, sex is the best sex? Well, it's kind of true. Do you know why? Simple.
because it's after you just had a hair-raising experience. Your adrenaline's pumping, your hormones are going out. Yeah, it's quite exciting. The same goes for anything after a really, really beautiful experience. And for moments like this, where you guys are about to go into the final battle, yeah. If there was any time to show Sonic having genuine doubt, it would be now, and it would be a good scene of having Sonic go, okay, and then have a really good romantic moment. This would be perfect for it. Then again, I've often been thinking to myself how to make this whole entire subplot work. And my answer? Sorry, Francis and Robert, but I think you should just let Sonic and Sally go at it. Yeah. You should just let them make love. You should have done it in the first chapter. Hell, give consequences. Have Sally get pregnant. Have Sonic impregnate her. Then you could have Knothole try to be angry and then have Sonic stand up for her. Point out that you guys want to get pissy? Remember, it takes two to make a baby. I was responsible. Come and get me. And have Sonic fight for her honor. That would be even more romantic. And then, after the baby's born, have Sonic have this sudden realization, oh crap, I'm a dad now. And really start having him more, responsible. And have him have a good conversation with Uncle Chuck. Because then, at least you would give Sonic something to do throughout these past stories. He has had barely anything to do. This is his biggest moment. So go ahead and let it happen. This whole entire bit is pointless. It's even more pointless that it shouldn't even be happening at all. You should have just let Sonic and Sally get married in the first part if you were this hung up on it. It really adds nothing to it. I could really take the scene away, and it would take away, and it would add nothing. The message that you're trying to send is null and void because of the presence of Donovan and Nadia. You spent this time trying to say premarital sex is bad, and maybe you should think about it, and then you had Nadia and Donovan go at it. So basically what I'm saying is, there's no point. Just let it go and let it happen. Sonic trembled slightly as Sally put her arms around him and held him close. Sally, he said quietly, I would love nothing more than to show you how much I love you tonight. That's why we're doing it. Oh, thank you, Sonic. And they did it. After Sonic and Sally went at it and had a great time and graced each other on an emotional level, Sally laid Sonic's head against her chest and held it there. Sonic hugged Sally close and soon fell asleep, comforted by the sound of her heart beating. Sally fell asleep soon after, and they spent the night like that, just holding each other, after making love. And again, it should be Sonic who's in this. Sally should be more level-headed. This is totally wrong for Sally, even in terms of this fic. We've seen Sally be more level-headed. We've seen her be more, sure of herself. We've seen her more focused on the mission. This should not be Sonic doing this. Early the next morning, before the sun rose. Turn out that light! Pow! Sonic was awoken by a voice in his head. He knew the voice to be Knuckles, and the word had left no doubt what he had to do. Armageddon. Sonic opened his eyes and looked around. At first he couldn't see anything, so he thought it was still in the middle of the night. But when he moved his head, he felt soft fur brushing against his face. I bet that's not all what he felt brushing against his face. He probably felt two soft, round objects rubbing against his face as he moved his head back and forth, and teasing to the gut! Yahoo! Turksy wasn't here when we did the show originally with Fandom Fridays. We were still in our infancy, knowing what type of gags to do. Now that Taxie's here, she's going to love using the taser to the stomach. I hate you so much.
It didn't take Sonic long to realize exactly where his head was. He swallowed hard, moving his head back slowly, finding the urge to wake Sally up and give in to what he was asking for so long. Sonic, you have a greater resistance than I would. If I woke up with my face in between two women, between a woman's breasts like that, I would totally do.
He slowly untwined her arms from around his head and back, and then he sat up. He eased off the bed and pulled on his sneakers. Sonic, Sally murmured sleepily. It's time, Sal, he said quietly. Sally got up in bed and looked at him squarely. I wish you didn't have to go, she whispered.
You know I do. It's now or never, Sal, and it's gotta be now. Sally nodded quietly. I know, Sonic. You better not get killed out there, or I'll kill you. Sonic chuckled a moment, but his heart wasn't in it. I'll be back. Hey, has the hedgehog ever broken a promise to you yet? Sally smiled down at him. It was reflected brightly in her blue eyes. She didn't say anything more, and neither did Sonic. He just picked up his backpack and walked out the hut slowly. He knew if he looked back, he may never be able to bring himself to leave. Sonic thought he was just going to leave without anyone noticing. To his surprise, all Knothole was waiting for him. They had formed two lines to the path leading to Robotropolis. Sonic waited between them. Everyone almost shook his hand, clapped his back, and told him to go kick some butt. Yes, everyone was there, including the previous video game characters. Mario gave Sonic a high five, and Twilight even gave her blessing. By the time he got to the end of the lines, he could hardly see for the tears in his eyes. He turned around to face everyone. Thanks, you guys, he said, wiping his tears from his eyes. This means more to me than you know. We know, nephew, Uncle Tuck said. Go right there and fulfill your destiny. Patricia came up and kissed her son on the cheek. Sonic hugged his mom for what he knew could be the last time. Then he kissed little Kelly Man's forehead and held her hand. Take care of me, sis, he whispered to her. Kelly Man looked up at Sonic and pulled her hand from his. But before Sonic could move his hand back, she pulled her hand into a little fist and butt Sonic's hand with it. Oh! Ow! Keenness overload! Sonic smiled back and hugged her. I love you, kid, he said softly. It was then Kelly Man whispered something only Sonic could hear, but it was the first words he ever spoke. Sonic started crying and looked up at everyone in the little village that had been his home for 13 years. Sally was standing in the doorway to his hut, looking right at him. Slowly, deliberately, she closed her right hand into a fist and placed it thumb first over her heart, extending her pinky straight up. Then she crossed her arms over her chest and pointed right at Sonic. Sonic smiled and repeated the gesture. Even here on Earth, those three movements were yelled to tell someone, I love you. Sonic turned around and walked away, heading towards Robotropolis and the single most important match of his life. Sally watched him as the tea was out of sight. All right, everyone, she said, her voice ringing clear over Knothole. You have 5 minutes to get ready. Then we go to Donovan's. Donovan and Nadia had been awake for at least an hour, working furiously to get set up in their hut. Everything's done on my side, he said. How about you? Just let me connect to a couple of my wires, Nadia said back. 30 seconds, that's all I need. Computer, as soon as he's done final diagnostics check on all systems. What'll do? There, Venice, Nadia said, standing and stretching her back out. Go to the computer. Starting sequence now. Estimating time to complete in 10 minutes. Donovan walked back to his chair and slumped down into it. If we make it back, it won't be by much, he said, yawning. Nadia draped her arms around his neck from behind. I never doubted you for a minute, she whispered, kissing his ear. Donovan put his hands on her arms and smiled. Us? You mean doubted us? He brought one of his hands to his lips and kissed it. Now we wait. Sonic cruised through the great forest easily. He knew he had time to get there, and wasn't going to use up any more energy than he absolutely had to. When he reached the outer edge of Robotropolis, the sun had just started to rise over the horizon. Ah, Pennsylvania, reasonable. He stood looking at it for a moment, hoping the next sunrise would rise over Robotropolis. He then ran over towards Robotnik's command center. just somehow knowing that they were waiting for him there. Diagnostic complete, Donovan's computer said, startling Nadia and Donovan. Everything is in order. It's Sonic has just entered Robotropolis. Now comes the crucial moment, Donovan said, crossing his fingers. Activate the monitors, Nadia said, crossing her fingers as well. One by one, each monitor flickered to life, showing various rooms and hallways of Robotnik's main building. Donovan and Nadia scanned over the monitors, looking at each of the 36 monitors stacked in 6 rows of 6 monitors each. They both breathed a sigh of relief as the last monitor lit up. We did it, Nadia whispered, hugging Donovan tight. Yes, we did, Donovan said, getting up and hugging her back. I hate to break this up, the computer said, but there's a large group of animals heading this way. Donovan took a step back and shrugged. That must be silly bringing a few of... Then he did a double take. Computer, define large. Cross-referencing. Comparing against current roster Nahal residents. It appears you brought them all, plus a few more. What? Donovan nearly yelled. He and Nadia hurried to the door and was greeted by what could be termed a mod. You know you can't all fit inside, Nadia said, looking inside their very cramped hut. We have no intention of that, Lippe said, standing with the last remaining members of the wolf pack. How many do you think you can hold? Computer? Donovan asked, turning inside. Including the two of you, we can fit 14 inside the hut. 16 if you choose to bring in the 2 youngest. Ari nodded, scratching at one of his horns. This is yours, princesses. Sally, Sandra, and Lydia huddled together for a moment. Okay, Sally said as they separated. You'll be the 3 of us, Donovan, Nadia, Bunny, Tails, Antoine, Maurice, Patricia, Killing Isabella, Uncle Chuck, Ari, Lupe, and Dorian. The rest of you stay out here, and we'll be sending out updates. No time to argue, Donovan said, walking inside and sitting down in his chair. Sonic has just arrived at Robotropolis. Sonic arrived at Robotnik's command center, and he saw Robotnik and Knuckles waiting for him. Let's do this, he said, immediately getting into a fighting stance. Are you ready, Doctor? Knuckles asked. Never been more ready in my life, Robotnik answered, his hands behind his cloak. Knuckles held out his palm and the 7 emeralds appeared, floating above his hands. Then, begin. Robotnik acted first, pressing a button on a nearby console. Spikes extended up from the floor, piercing Sonic's bad foot. Sonic screamed in pain and tried to pull his foot free, but the spikes were barred and held his foot fast. Let's see how you handle my robots without your speed, Robotnik said. The floor gave away under Sonic, sending him down to the cellar, spikes and all. Doctor! Knuckles said harshly. That's not how it's done! Oh, but you see, my dear Knuckles, you gave me the idea. You said that all that had to happen was that one of us be unable to fight. By the time he gets back here, if he does, he'll be in absolutely no condition to fight. Somewhere, Bowser's saying, Dude, that's unfair! Knuckles cursed under his breath, but couldn't say anything. Robotnik had found the ultimate loophole, and there wasn't a thing Knuckles could do about it. You know that if he doesn't make it in a certain time, I will be forced to hand them over to you, Knuckles stated. Of course. Grab her! Nadia yelled, jumping out of Donovan's lap, pointing at Sally. Sally tackled her sister to the ground, just as he was about to break through the door. Hold her down! Nadia said, running over with a gas canister in hand. Sally kicked, bit, scratched, and clawed Sandra, trying to get free. Nadia sprayed the canister right into Sally's nose, then had to use all of it to knock her out. Meanwhile, Donovan sat calmly in his chair, not moving his eye from the monitor. I said anything, he said quietly, oblivious to what was going on around him. Sonic glided hard when he finally stopped falling. He immediately tore off his sneaker and began to work out the barbed spikes. It was slow going, but there were many of them, but he finally got them all out. His foot was swelling up, and blood leaked out of many holes. I can't even walk like this, he thought. He looked in a room for something to bind his foot with. He ended up in the boiler room in front of a large coal furnace. Nearby were some worker bots shoveling the coal into the furnace. A piece of coal dropped off the pile and fell near him. He looked at it for a second to close his eyes and winced. I can't believe I'm actually going to do this, he thought, picking up the coal and crushing it to dust. He spread the dust over his foot and pulled a power ring from his backpack.
Taking a deep breath, he touched the power ring to the cold dust. The ring glowed brightly and ignited the dust. Sonic let out a cry of pain that could be heard through most of the building. But it had the effect he wanted. The wounds were closed, cauterized. He pulled his sneaker back on and stood up. The pain was bearable, but he knew there was no way he'd be able to run. Fucking his mind getting Robotnik, he shut out the pain and walked out from the room. Sonic stood in the hallway, getting his bearings. He had a general idea of where he was and how to get back to Robotnik. He turned left and walked until he hit a nearby room. Even in the dim light, he could see there was a grid of tiny holes in the floor. Why do I have a good feeling about this? He asked himself sarcastically. He unslung his backpack and looked inside. A few pieces of coal had fallen from in the tumble he had taken earlier. He pulled one out and skipped it across the floor. As soon as it landed, the spikes extended from holes in the floor. It wasn't just in the area of the coal either. The whole floor was covered, and even though the spikes weren't barbed as the ones that had pierced Sonic's foot, they were coated in a sickly green liquid. Sonic watched for a moment the spikes retracted. He was about to go through the room, thinking the trap disarmed, but Cindy told him to wait. 10 seconds later, the spikes retracted. They shot it again, repeating the cycle. 10 seconds, he thought, watching the cycle again. I can make that, even without running. I just gotta time it right. Sonic waited a few more cycles, then headed across the room as soon as the spikes retracted. The room was only about 5 yards long, so he got through it without any problem. But he kept moving for a whole 10 seconds. It was a good thing he did. What he hadn't noticed was the spikes came out into the hallway beyond the room. He just got past it when his 10 seconds were up. Sonic checked his sneakers to make sure the last set of spikes didn't clip him. Once they didn't. Man, Butnick's pulling out all the stops today, he thought, continuing on. Then again, you better hope I don't make it back to him. As Sonic walked, he began to notice the floor was curving. The more it curved, the more it began to look like a half-pike. Even the ceiling was torn away and part of it to raise to the height of the walls. What's he up to now? Sonic thought, walking down the center of the U-shaped corridor. In the distance, he could hear this trumpet music. What? This isn't the special stage? He didn't have to wait long to find out. Just ahead of him, 6 metal balls were rolling across the curve of the hallway, mostly in an alternating pattern, but slightly out of sync. Sonic began to time the rhythm of the rolling balls. He wouldn't have been able to run it, even without a power ring. The way they were timed, Sonic had to pass each one, and then wait for a second or two for the next one to pass. Just then, Sonic heard a rumbling behind him. He turned to look and saw giant black metal balls bearing down on him. No time, he thought, hurrying past the first ball. And roll me a dex save. And roll me a dex save. And roll me a dex save. As he waited for the second to pass, he heard the first one get crunched by the monster rolling behind him. The timing was exacting. Too soon to get run over by the small one in front of him. Too late to get flattened by the one behind him. Just as Sonic passed the 6th and final ball, there was a big hole in front of him. Oh man! He yelled, just barely keeping his balance. But he had no time to set himself as he heard the 6th ball get crushed. Closed his eyes and flung across the hole. His toes hooked onto the opposite end and fell flat on his face, but he was across. The ball fell into the hole, effectively covering it and making the floor look level. Sonic took a few minutes to compose himself before moving on. This was truly the deadliest game he ever played, and from there it was only get worse. Back at Donovan's hut, nearly all the freedom fighters were looking at the monitor screens in awe. Are you sure that's Sonic? Sonder asked, pointing at the hedgehog on the screen. There's no way he's ever had that much patience. I'm thinking we have Tony to thank for that, Adwan said. I'm not thinking Sonic would ever got this far without his hip. You're right about that, Circuit Twine, Bunny said. Looks like I don't even apologize after all. Donovan never took his eyes off from the monitors, but arched one eyebrow. Where's Silly? He asked. Just then, everyone heard an oof, and outside the hut, the door flew open and Rotor tossed Sally back in. Keep it IR this time, he said, stretching his wings. I don't like having to sit on her to keep her here. Anybody got rope? Tails asked. What happened to doing what's best for Mobius? Donovan asked. Again, this thing feels insulting to her. Wouldn't it have been cooler for Sally to be practically emotionless as he's watching this, strong, and then only once in a while taking a break to walk out, and then have Bunny ask if Sally was really that cold, and then see that Sally had been taking time out to cry once in a while to show that she is still trying to hold back her vulnerability? I like to see you stay calm and that we're naughty out there, Sally said, holding her back. I would have been knocked out, tied up, and bolted down before she even made it to Robotropolis. Donovan said seriously, I didn't want to go that route with you, but if you insist, it could be arranged. And I've got this other idea, Nadia said, patting a bed next to her. And once Seth finds the computer, it'll stun you long enough for us to do what we have to. Sally grumbled, but said nothing more on the subject. Instead, she asked, how's Sonic doing? Maybe you should try watching the screens for a change. Donovan said in place of Lydia, I think you'll see your fiancé is doing quite well for himself. Back in Robotropolis, Sonic was now facing an immense room filled with intense heat. But look at he might, he could see no source of the heat. He took a cautious step into the room and nearly fell through an illusionary floor. He lay down and stuck his hand under the illusion. About 8 feet down, a molten steel. I'm toast if I fall, Sonic thought, looking across the gates in distance. It was easily jumpable, and Sonic was able to make it, bad foot and all. Luckily, he also had the key card that changed with heat whenever he walked in, and also had the chance to change with cold. Oh, that was annoying. One of the reasons I love Metal Gear Solid. He walked with his hands out in front of him, stopping every time he felt the intense heat of the molten steel. At one point, he jumped too far and almost fell a pool on the other end. I gotta be more careful, he thought, jumping across that floor and continuing on. There was one final pool near the far wall, larger than the others, but the jump was still makeable. He lifted his head up and saw a nice wide passageway in the wall. Immediately became suspicious. It's too easy, he muttered under his breath. What are you up to now, Robotnik? He took another piece of coal from his backpack and threw it at the opening. It looked like it bounced off of something and fell into the steel below. Another illusion, he thought, so where's the real one? Just then, he felt a light breeze stir his quills. He moved around until the breeze hit his face flush. Of course, he was facing a blank wall, but he remembered back to the maze in the void. He tossed a piece of coal at the wall and nodded as it passed right through. Sonic backed up a few steps and jumped where the opening was. As soon as he landed in a hidden hallway, nozzles hidden in the walls sprayed out a green spike mixture Sonic knew all too well. Mega Muck! He yelled as he and the entire hallway was coated in quiet. Great! Can't even reach the power ring! Sadly, Sonic was afraid that we were going with Fleetway rules and this was Sonic's kryptonite! Robotnik smiled cruelly, once he saw Sonic slowly starting to plow through the Mega Muck. There, you see, you'll never get out of that, he told Knuckles. Now then, can I have my emeralds? He is still moving, Doctor, Knuckles said, more than a touch of anger in his voice. Until he gives up, which I don't see happening from your troops. The emeralds stay with me. And besides, there's only one more room to go, and he's here. But there's still that one last room, Robotnik said, chuckling. It took Sonic over a half hour to get through the hallway. He was completely exhausted when he did. He spent the next minutes cleaning the Mega Muck off himself in his backpack, catching his breath. I'm coming, Robotnik! He yelled, staring right out through the open door. By all means, Hedgehog, Robotnik said, pushing a nearby button. All of a sudden, the hallway was lit by no less than 15 Krypton bulbs aimed right at Sonic's eyes. The flash of light blinded him, and he reeled backward into a wall. As soon as he touched it, an electric shock went through him, robbing him of a sense of touch. He fell to the floor as speakers started blaring a cacophony of meaningless sounds at such a high volume that Sonic was deafened. Blind, deaf, deaf, dumb, and blind kid, Sir plays a mean hedgehog. And unable to feel, Sonic lay in a crumpled heap until the floor tilted, depositing him at Robotnik's feet. 13 years I've waited for this, Robotnik said, kicking Sonic savagely in the ribs, and now I'm going to enjoy it. No! Sally screamed, jumping to her feet. Get her! Sandra yelled, diving for her sister's waist before she could leave Donovan's hut. Immediately, the computer fired a stun beam at Sally.
but Sandra's dive made her get caught by instead. But before she had a chance to take 2 steps, every single animal in there jumped on Sally, even Donovan and Nadia. But such was Sally's level of anger, fear, and adrenaline, they were all able to keep her down. Even Bunny, with a robotic arm, had trouble keeping down one of Sally's arms. Since Roar could not fit inside the hut, it was a very long fight. At one point, Donovan got thrown near the monitors. He picked himself up, about to make another try at holding Sally down, when something caught his eye. Robotnik had tossed Sonic near a laser rifle, but before Sonic could do anything more than make a weak grab at it, Robotnik kicked it out of the way and backhanded Sonic across the room. Donovan studied the monitor very closely, not paying attention to the beating Robotnik was giving Sonic. Slowly, a smile spread across his lips, but that smile nearly vanished at what happened next. "Doctor!" Knuckles yelled. "Enough! Call off your attack! You can help the emeralds!" "Come on, Robotnik," Donovan muttered, suddenly still room as Knuckles said again, "Let your hatred get the better of you." Robotnik turned to look at Knuckles and smiled. "You said the fight goes on until one cannot continue," he said in a low voice. "The hedgehog is still getting up. This isn't over until he no longer can." Knuckles scowled but said nothing more. Robotnik turned back to Sonic, laughing. But his laugh was cut short when he saw Sonic fisting around inside his backpack. "It ends now!" he said, picking up the laser rifle and aiming at Sonic. Without any hesitation, he pulled the trigger. "Sonic!" See, if Sally broke now, it would be far more powerful. She ran to the monitor, expecting to see Sonic's charred and lifeless body there. "Don't worry, Sally," Donovan said quietly. "For you see, the real fun's about to begin." Robotnik pulled the trigger again and again, but it never fired. "What is wrong with this thing?" he yelled, tossing it to the floor. All of a sudden, a yellow glow surrounded Sonic. Though he was bruised, battered, and bloody, his eyes focused on Robotnik, and he stood straight and tall. "Looking for this, Robotnik?" he asked. In one hand, Sonic held a power ring, and the other was the power cell to the rifle. "I want to play It Doesn't Matter. Anybody else?" "No!" Robotnik yelled, kicking savagely at Sonic again. Sonic just caught the foot and twisted it, sending Robotnik sprawling. "You were right about 2 things, he said, his voice low and menacing. "It has been 13 years. And it ends now!" Robotnik scrambled to his feet and out the main door. Not the one that led to Megamach. Sonic and Knuckles were right behind him. Sonic was attacking him with his trademark speed. Getting Robotnik so turned around and dizzy, he didn't know which way he was running anymore. Then suddenly, Sonic fell and skidded across the hallway. Bad fight giving out on him. Robotnik turned back to him and reached down to grab him by the neck. "I'm not taking any more chances," he said. Sonic went into a spin dash and finished it off with an uppercut to send Robotnik flying through the door. Donovan saw which room Robotnik had landed in, and a huge smile broke out on his face. "I love irony," he said, staring right at the monitor. Everyone in that hut looked at the monitor and smiled, knowing immediately what Donovan meant. Robotnik rubbed his chin and tried to clear the cobwebs. He unsteadily got to his feet, just in time for a large glass tube to come down and surround him. Robotnik looked around, realizing in a second where he was. "No!" he screamed, pounding on the tube. You know, if I was directing this, I would have had Robotnik steal the emeralds from Knuckles when it looked like Sonic was down, and then create a giant egg robot, and then have the robot proceed to beat the living snot out of Sonic, and just when the robot looks like it's about to crush him, the emeralds glow and the power flows away from Robotnik to their true master. Then I would start playing Open Your Heart and have Super Sonic destroy the egg golem. Sonic stood at a nearby console, hand poised just above the button. "Do you feel it, Robotnik?" Sonic asked. "Do you feel the fear of thousands upon thousands of Mobius that fell inside that tube? I hope you enjoy it, because that's the last thing you're ever going to feel. This is for Mobius!" he said, slamming his hand down on the button. Sonic watched coldly as the tube filled with a purple light. He wanted every second of this burned into his memory. The moment when Mobius finally became free. The moment when Robotnik himself was roboticized. And then it was done. The tube lifted and the robot that had once been Robotnik waited quietly for orders. But no orders would come, for all roboticized creatures were programmed to follow Robotnik, and in a state he could not give himself any orders. Knuckles walked up to Sonic and caught him as he fell. A few spoken words of magic and Sonic was fully healed. "You won, Sonic Hedgehog," he said solemnly. "The power of the Emeralds is now yours to command. Let us return to Knothole." Everyone, both inside and outside Donovan's hut, let out a cheer. "He did it!" Sally said, grabbing the nearest animal, which happened to be Donovan, and giving a sound kiss on the lips, and held it for 15 seconds. Donovan just looked at her in surprise and shock, but Sally was way too happy to notice. "Everyone, back to Knothole!" she called. Everyone followed, except for Donovan, who was standing back in shock from being kissed. Sally and Nadia walked up to him, snapped her fingers in front of his face a few times, then kissed him herself. More Sally than Sally did. Donovan put his arms around Nadia as she led him up for air. "I'll just say this," he said in a low whisper. "I pity Sonic on his wedding night." "Sally go join them?" Nadia asked, kissing his ear gently. After a couple of seconds, Donovan snapped up and nodded. "Yeah," he said, walking arm in arm with her. "Besides, I'm not ready for kids yet." Sonic and Knuckles stood in the center of a knothole. And then Sonic and Knuckles walked into Knothole, looking at the weird cartridge. "Boo!" shouted Trix, waiting for the others to return. Sally was the first one to reach them and literally flew to Sonic's arm, covering his face with kisses. "You did it!" Sally whispered, snuggling into his chest. "It's over. It's finally over." "Not quite," Sonic said. He looked over to Knuckles. "Let's get this over with." Knuckles nodded, and the 7 emeralds appeared in the air before Sonic. "Call the names," he said, smiling. "Whatever will be the center one is the one you speak last." Sonic nodded, turning to look at the emeralds full on. In a strong, clear voice, he spoke the 7 names. Earth, fire, wind, water, lightning, shadow, life. The emeralds joined as Sonic indicated. The great life emerald at the center. Sally backed away as Sonic took a hold of them. In a flash, the emeralds disappeared, absorbed into Sonic. Immediately, a change came over Sonic. Thunder, wind, and lightning. Da, da. Open your heart and it'll be alright! He grew a little taller and more muscular. The blue of his quills were replaced by yellow, as if he'd become a living power ring. He was stronger, faster, better than he'd ever been. In short, supersonic. "I feel their power," he said quietly, his voice tinged with awe. "I can feel their energy coursing through my veins. And now I know what I must do with it." He turned to look at Sally, extending a yellow hand toward her. "Will you do it with me, my love?" he asked gently. Sally nodded, taking his hand. As he did, the emerald energy coursed through her as well. Brown fur turned to pink so bright she almost glowed. Her armor and head stood on end, much like Sonic's quills. Everything Sonic became, so did Sally. Or should I say, Super Sally. "Bite me, Sega!" "Oh, Sonic, it's beautiful. And you're right. I know what we must do." What happened next was the object of much discussion and legend throughout Mobius for generations. Though many sides of the story were told, they all agreed on one thing. A comet circled Mobius that day, yellow and pink intertwined. Anything that the comet touched was restored to its former self, before Robotnik had dared to touch it. All roboticized creatures were cured of their curse. All areas fouled by pollution became clean and pure again. Even Robotropolis, for 13 years a place of death and evil, became Mobotropolis once more. "Okay, now Trixie knows you ripped this one off!" "Okay, I'm not gonna lie, and anybody who actually has a TV Tropes account, please edit this, but yeah. The last scene of Fall Starfleet, A Rebirth of Friendship, was based off of this. With Twilight and Trixie using the power of the elements of fate and the elements of harmony to reform all of Equestria back to normal and fix everything that needed to possibly be fixed, was based off of this scene, off of this moment right here. Okay, I'm not going to deny it. It was based off of it. Granted, done in a pony way with the Alicorn god that we saw from Equestria Girls, Rainbow Rocks, plus its friend. Speaking of which, I have to laugh at this. Shows you what happens when you try riffing a fic that's a sequel. My riffers were trying to make fun of one of my Christmas fics based on fall. And their first stupid comment was, I thought they were all anthropomorphic. You know, even if you read the last chapter, you would see that they were all fixed and turned back to normal. And then had the nerve to go, ugh, when seeing the Alicorn god that was used in Equestria Girls Rainbow Rocks. I bet they were thinking that was my own creation. Remember, folks, reading is your friend. When all was ended, Sonic and Sally stood by the fountain in the center of Mobotropolis, each holding each other, sharing a long, passionate kiss. There was frequently a rare crowd forming around them, but he didn't acknowledge them until they were ready. It's done, Sonic said quietly as the animals' energies faded from their bodies. Everything is restored to what it once was. Sally nodded, turned to face the crowd. Let today see a celebration the likes of which this planet has never seen, she called, her voice ringing clearly through the city streets. Today is the day we have taken Mobius back! The entire crowd let up a cheer. All that is, except Donovan, who suddenly disappeared. But only Nadia noticed that, as she set off in search of him. Sonic and Sally turned to look at Knuckles, who now had 7 dull stones. Will you stay with us? At least for the party? Sally asked. Knuckles shook his head. My work here is done. I must now return to the floating island. You better not party too long. Now that Robotnik is deposed, you only have a week to become queen. Don't worry about that, Sally said, smiling. All that will be taken care of tomorrow, when the weddings finally take place. Knuckles nodded and opened a portal. To those who could see, a female echidna waited on the other side, smiling warmly at Knuckles. I must take my leave, then, he said. After all, I think I have my own plans to make now that my job is completed. Me and my love, Judy Sue. Aw, Julie! We apologize, but Leslie Briere is a big fan of hers. Will we see you again? Sonic asked. Who knows, Sonic? It's possible. Until then, farewell. He stepped through the portal and was gone, leaving all of them in their celebrations. But there was someone who was not celebrating. Donovan was in the room that held the robotizer, on his knees, his father's sword in his lap. Nadia walked in quietly and knelt down next to Donovan. I failed to keep you my promise, he said quietly. What do you mean? Nadia asked, a hint of fear in her voice. I told him that just when he thought he got away, I'd be there to slit his throat. Yet he is gone, not a drop of blood on my sword. Which means it truly isn't over. He will be back. Donovan did not know it. The one he spoke of stood on a hill overlooking the newly restored Mobotropolis. You may have won this day, Hedgehog, he said quietly, but I still survive, and I will return. So intent was he did not notice a black-robed figure appear beside him. You are correct, Doctor, the figure said, touching Robotnik's left arm, restoring it to metal. But only when we return. It'll be as my master directs. This is not the end. No, of course not. The next episode is the final one.